Welcome to Parenting GPS, navigating your parenting journey. I'm Kari, Kling, the host of your show. You know, whenever there's an issue with our children, and I've said this before, whether it's behavioral, physical, emotional, attention driven, my first go-to, if you will, is to always work with the parents to say, what could be the root cause? Start with the body. What could be going on that's making difficulties for a child? Our guest today is going to be sharing her story of what happened with her son. Britta Helayne is not just a mom. She's a mom of 4 kids. But one of her sons, who happens to be a twin, had terrible behavioral and physical issues when he was growing up. And no matter what she tried in terms of parenting, she couldn't seem to turn it around. Britta is the author of the book, Why Can't You Just Behave? And this is her story. She's going to share it with you today, and I'm going to introduce her by reading her bio. Britta is the mother of a child with past behavior problems and understands the challenges that parents face today. In 2009, she came to a crossroads to find answers for her son's challenging behaviors. What she learned transformed her son's life and put her on a journey to help parents experience the same breakthroughs that she did with her son. Along Britta's journey to help other parents with their children, she became an internationally certified reflexologist, an aromatherapist, a holistic life coach, a personal trainer, and a certified integrative health coach, in addition to writing her book, Why Can't You Just Behave? She takes the knowledge of her 26 years of being a parent of 4 boys and her training and experience to help parents create a healthy and balanced family life where children can thrive. Britta, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kari. I appreciate you letting me come on and share my message.
It's such an important message. And I want to share with our viewers, you and I actually met through a friend years ago.
Yes.
And you were kind enough to give me actually 2 copies of your book. This was about 3 years ago. And here we are, right?
Here we are.
And I'd like to begin with our show by giving the parents a vision of maybe how you were feeling, because I'm sure everybody can relate. And these are your words. In the very beginning of your book, in chapter 1, you talk about your son, Braden, and it says, either he's moving out of the house or I'm moving out, but we both cannot stay. Those words actually came to my mind when one of my twin boys pushed me to the limit and I was at the end of trying. I had tried everything with Braden, all but 4 years old at the time, to behave. Nothing worked. Nothing.
Yeah.
And you know what, Britta, I want to just say I appreciate your honesty in sharing that with the world, because I don't know that there's a parent out there that at some moment they were just at that point. And I know that so many of the parents that I work with, feel that, we've all been there.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your story and how did this book come to be?
Yeah. So, mother of 4, like you said, Braden is my youngest child, even though he is a twin. And I had just a whole host of challenging behavior with him. My other boys weren't perfect, of course, and they had their own challenges, but it was apparent that there was something different about Braden and the way that he was behaving. Um, he was more like a tornado that of destruction and really negative, and I just couldn't get a handle on it. Mother guilt came over me. I wondered what I was doing wrong. Started diving into reading books and trying positive parenting, reward charts, asking the pediatrician, asking other parents that had children that were older that seemed to be much better behaved than than he was. I really wanted to know what I was doing wrong. And so at the time when I came to that crossroads of the sentence that you read, where I was just at my end, I was also experiencing a health crisis of my own. And I had a mystery illness and went to doctor after doctor after doctor to try to figure out what was wrong with me and why I wasn't feeling good physically. And, I had my own moodiness. So I started playing around with the foods that I ate, started playing around with my diet, and I noticed that I was getting tremendous relief and I was recovering with just altering how I ate. And I noticed my moods changing dramatically. So it was at that time that I thought, you know what? If I change that much with just altering my diet, what if I applied what I'm doing to myself to my son? Would I see any results? And so that's how my story began. And everything really turned around with Braden. And I wanted to share my message with other parents because it's not, when you think of parenting, you're thinking of parenting behaviors and not really parenting a whole child, looking at everything.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And again, I said at the beginning, and I've said this in other shows, and I'll keep saying it. We always have to say to ourselves, is there a root cause?
Yeah.
And I will tell you, my experience of doing this for 40 years is that I would tell you that 90 to 95% of the time, the answer is we were able to find it.
Yeah.
Yes. That whether it was, even eyesight, the child can't see the board. I mean, I could go into a million stories with you. And we're going to start talking about these in more detail beginning in the next segment. But just very, very quickly, and again, we'll share more about it. Could you please tell our viewers, how is Braden doing today and how old is he today?
Okay, well, Braden is about to turn 19 in a few weeks. He is not the same child. He's doing phenomenal. He was buried by so many symptoms or masked by so many symptoms. I didn't even know that I had a child that I have today. He's he's amazing. He's very kind and compassionate and just not like what he was before at all.
That's so important. And you know what you said about masking symptoms
Mm,
so many times, and it's not, if anybody's listening to this, you're not doing anything wrong. You're doing what you think is best and what
that's right.
we're told to do. But an initial response for so many parents is to go, like you said, to a doctor, maybe get some medication, therapy, whatever.
Yes,
And so many times that just masks the symptoms if for medication, and not really dealing with, okay, what is the root cause. And
right.
so, Britta, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into, okay, what can parents look for when they begin to build their house of looking at their child and creating some changes. We'll be right back. Britta, in the first segment, we started to share a little bit about your son and what you did, and you talked a little bit about nutrition. And I mentioned that you have in your book, there's a graphic, and we're going to show it now, about a little house that parents can think of as they're building a way to think about change in their family. Could you just briefly give an overview of that house, please?
Yeah, well, the house represents our body, and you can notice on the bottom is nutrition. And you need a strong foundation when you're building a house so your walls and the roof doesn't come tumbling down. And that's really the point of building the foundation with nutrition, because nutrition is so important. You can try physical fitness, and you can try sleeping, and you can try the environment and your mind and everything like that, but without a strong nutrition base, your house is going to crumble and your body isn't just going to work the way it should.
Absolutely. And you know what? For those of you that are watching, in some past shows, we're really going to focus on the nutrition part today in terms of time. But if you're interested, there are two former shows, and you're welcome to go to my website at karikling.com. One of the shows is with Dr. Amy Dirksen, where she talks about autism and chronic illness, but at the end, she does a big piece about creating a sleep sanctuary and how that's so important physically about what to have in the room, not to have in the room. And then Building Better Brains with Dr. Jean Moyes, we talk about the importance of fitness and movement and what that does to your whole body. So I just wanted to mention that. So if someone wants more information, there's a place that they can go, as well as your book. So Britta, one of the things that I love in your book is that you not only talk about the different food categories, chemical categories, if you will, when we talk about preservatives and dyes and things like that, but you actually break out the common offender, and you call it common offenders connected with the symptoms. And so you've given 5 categories. We're only going to really have the time to look at 2 of them today. But could you please start? We're going to start with corn. Could you give our viewers an example of, if your child is having a reaction, whether it's an allergy or a sensitivity to a particular food, how you might know that that's what it is? What might parents see?
Yeah, so basically the common offenders that I have, the different categories listed, have to do with sensitivities in the body. And so sensitivities are different than allergies. Allergies are like an immediate reaction. Sensitivities are a delayed reaction that can cause physical and behavior symptoms. So they can be anywhere from right after you eat the food, or they can even be 3 to 4 days after. So they're harder to catch. The common offenders that I have listed in the book are corn, gluten, dairy, soy, and casein I group as one, and then additives and preservatives. And then I leave a little bit open for any sensitivities, because sensitivities can come with any food, but there are ones that are more common, and those are the ones that I listed in the book. So they each have their own symptoms kind of attached to them,
Mm-hmm.
kind of go towards one of those with the symptoms that I have listed.
And so let's say, for example, corn, which I just
Mhm.
mentioned. And my experience is that's not the first one that a lot of people think of. And
Right.
the high fructose corn syrup is in so many things we don't ever even think about. If a child has a sensitivity that or an allergy to corn, what are some symptoms that a parent might observe?
Yeah, corn isn't one, like you said, that is very well known, but a lot of children have reactions to it. So corn can disrupt brain function. So you may not see a lot of physical symptoms with corn, but you might see more anger, aggression, outbursts, tics, um, disruptive sleep, more something in those categories.
Mm-hmm. And what do you recommend if a parent is listening to this right now and
Mhm.
they're thinking, oh my gosh, my child has 2 or 3 of the symptoms you just mentioned. I need to stop the corn for a while. How do you suggest they begin? Do they just go cold turkey? Do they do it gradually? Do they just start reading labels? What is your recommendation?
Well, I think the first thing that you need to do is just become curious and kind of become a detective and write down when you think your child is having a problem. Kind of keep a food diary of what the food is before they ate, what the food that what they're having a reaction to,
Mhm.
after it's eaten, and kind of be curious about it that way to catch it. And if they believe it's corn, they also need to educate themselves on what all the different names of corn comes in, because it's not just high fructose syrup, but that's the one that's common. In my book, I also have an ingredients list of what you can look for all the different names of corn. I can't even tell you how many there are.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's like just we think we have to look for one thing and then we find out, oh, it could be under the name of
Oh, definitely.
a few other things.
Oh, yeah.
What about the second category you mentioned was dairy, soy, and
Casein.
casein, and casein is a milk protein in dairy. What are some symptoms that you normally see or other parents normally see when there is a sensitivity to one of those ingredients?
Yeah, those can be more physical manifestations, congestion, sore throat. If your child is having chronic ear infections, chronic sinus infections, but it can also be a mood disruptor. If there's anxiety or depression, you might want to look into dairy, soy, or casein.
Yeah. And my experience, and I'm interested to know what your thoughts are about this, is that it doesn't have to take a long time to see some changes. I
Mm.
know I can give you an example of one particular family that I worked with a few years ago. Their son was having some tics, motor tics, verbal tics, some anger issues, and one of the recommendations, there were many that I gave her, was, let's take him off of dairy just for 3 days. Let's just see if you see anything. And by the end of the second day, she was like, oh my gosh, they're still there, but it's so much better.
Right.
About the third or fourth day, she wanted to keep doing it another day or so. She said everything is reduced like 80%. So
Yeah.
that was a pretty quick turnaround with that particular child. Do you find that that's common, or do some kids, does it take longer?
I think it's pretty common to see right away, especially if you're in tune with your child,
Mhm.
and you're really looking for it and noticing it. Yeah, I think it can happen within hours sometimes.
Yeah, wow. And we could go on and on about the dyes and the preservatives. Um, we have to go to our next segment, but I just want to share with you also another child that I'm working with the family. This child had come so far. The boy's a teenager in the 2 years that I've been working with them. And the mom called me one day and said, oh my gosh, it was like, I don't know what happened, but it was like we regressed 2 years in
Oh,
2 days. Long story short, she found out the night before he was at an event, and it was right after Halloween, and he ate the red licorice, and it just
boom.
impacted him the next day like crazy. It was like going
Yeah.
back to his old behavioral pattern.
Mm.
So I hope, Britta, that people who are interested in this, get a copy of your book and look at some of these things in order to help their child. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, what did you do? How long did it take? What did you do? And what do you suggest for other parents? We'll be right back. So Britta, we've talked a little bit about your journey with your son Braden. We've talked a little bit about how his behaviors were so uncontrolled and unruly, if you will, and his physical struggles. We talked a little bit about that house that you said that parents can build, focusing on nutrition and looking at different common offenders and the symptoms that they may bring to different children. We know that all children are different, and we know that all children won't respond the same to anything that we do. But let's hear a little bit more about your story with Braden. Where did you begin? I know you began with nutrition, you started that, but did you begin with a certain food group? How long did it take? Did you do anything else? Tell us a little bit more about your story, please.
Yeah, so when I was at the point of things needing to turn around, it was actually May, and he was going to all day kindergarten in August. And I knew I needed to hurry up and do something before that. that time period. So the first thing that I decided to eliminate was dairy, soy, and casein. I had done that with myself and saw success, and I thought maybe I would see the same success with Braden. And I did, as far as a lot of the physical symptoms going away. So he had eczema and rosy red cheeks, and his ears were red, and he was actually supposed to get his tonsils out. After taking everything away, all those symptoms went away. After taking the dairy, soy, and casein away, all of those ceased. I still wasn't happy with where his behavior was at. We were still having behavior issues. So the next thing that I took out was gluten. Gluten seemed to be a hit or miss for him. Some of the time I noticed he was improving, and some of the time I noticed he was actually worse. So the next thing I went on to was corn. And that was it. That was the offender that was really bothering him. Just as a note, a lot of gluten-free foods contain corn. And so when I thought I was doing something good for Braden, I was actually giving him more corn than I usually did. So that's
Yeah.
where I saw the behaviors kind of ramp up. So
Mhm.
after I removed the corn, I noticed the tantrums going away. He had tics, those went away. Night walking, he would get up at night and walk. He would have night terrors, those all went away. Destructiveness, all the bad behaviors. He wasn't perfect, and we still had our times,
Mhm.
but it wasn't anything like before. It was like everything had come to a calm.
That's so
And
amazing.
that happened in about the end of July. So the whole progression, which I didn't eliminate everything at once, you do it slowly, one at a time, took about 2.5 months.
Mhm. And I just want to say, because some parents listening might be thinking, oh, but my child needs dairy, growing bones,
Yeah,
and so we're not saying cut out calcium. We're not saying, don't give
that's
your
right.
child other foods, and talk to your pediatrician or regular family doctor about some kind of what else you can do. We're not saying that, but so many of these foods in the processing, um, they change their format in terms of how the body receives it. And so did Braden ever slide backwards if he had those foods again, or once you got him to a better place, did he stay there?
So I was pretty adamant about him staying away from corn, at least because of the behaviors.
Hmm.
Um, he slid back occasionally if he had something where it was either my mistake because I didn't know the ingredient was in under another name, or sometimes it lists other ingredients but it doesn't tell you what they are, and you can call companies and they may not tell you. And I could definitely tell if it contained corn by the way that he was acting.
Yeah,
So yes, there were times that it came back in, but the good thing is it also disappeared once we substituted and took that back out.
that's awesome. It's so amazing. And I know that the trauma of the difficulty that you went through and that Braden went through is really going to serve other parents, and I know that that's your goal in this. um any other thoughts that you would like to share about Braden's recovery, if you will? Again, it's going to take a different amount of time for different people. It just depends on your child. I know one thought I'd like to ask you: so many times, in it, depending on the age of the child, they want what
Mhm.
they want, and they may not want to abide by, I want to have this food, or I want to have that food. My friends are having it. I want to have it. How did you handle that with Braden? Did you teach him and say, you know what, when this is how it makes you feel, this is, how you act when you have this food, and try to get him to be the person that says, I don't want to eat that? How did you handle that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. It's about empowering your child, and it's not about punishment, taking food away. You never ever want to do that and use food as, no, you can't have this, because it is talking to them. And believe me, children don't want to misbehave. They don't want to be out of control, and they want to please their parents. So when they're feeling those things and you can connect that a food is causing them to do that, they will make that own connection. And it may not be right away, but if you continually talk in their language, they're going to get that. They
Right.
will get that.
And that's so important. And with anything, if you're talking about food, if you're talking about video games, if you're talking about anything that is not healthy for them, it's not about punishment. It's not about, well,
No.
you do this or this is going to happen. It's, as you just said, Britta, it's about empowering our children
Yes.
to let them know how much we love them and we want the best for them, and to explain that this is how this impacts your body, and it's not good for you. And so that's a really, really important point, and I've had parents say to me, oh, but they wanted to have it anyway. And I said, well, you know what, let them observe what happens and how they feel when
Yes.
they have it, and get rid of that power struggle.
Yeah, they will make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we come back from our break, we have some questions from our viewers for you. We'll be right back. This is the part of the show where we try to answer your parenting questions to help you reach your parenting destination. And Britta, we have two questions today that were sent in ahead of time, and I'd like to read them to you now. The first question is from Jessica N. from Grand Rapids. Jessica writes, I'm divorced and my daughter goes back and forth from my home and my ex-husband's home. My ex doesn't seem to recognize and honor our child's food sensitivities, and when I get her back, I feel like she's wild and it's difficult for her to focus. I know she's eating foods that she shouldn't eat when she is with her dad, and I don't know how to get him to understand. We kind of just talked about this. What's your response to that, Britta?
Yeah, so I feel like this is a pretty common scenario. And again, I'm going to go back to empowering the child, because no matter where the child's going, if it's to their father's house or mother's house, to a grandparent's house, or just to a friend's house, we can't control the outside world. And we don't want to try to control everything, but we can empower our children to make the right choices. And it's just the same as talking to them and helping them to make that connection with the food and how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love how you talk about that, about empowering our children, and that it's all done through love, as you said.
It is. Yeah.
It's all about, what, I want to help you be the best you can be and to feel good. And this is how we do it. Excellent. Our second question is from Janice in Phoenix. My 8-year-old son has several food sensitivities. Do most children outgrow this, or will he have to deal with this for the rest of his life?
Well, it's not a life sentence, so that's the good news. Sensitivities wreak havoc in the body. And so once you remove the sensitivity, you're giving the body its own chance to heal. And once that body heals, you may be able to introduce what they're sensitive back into their diet. And also, as the child grows, I noticed with Braden, once he got into high school, body chemistry changes, hormones change. And so things might change for them as well during that time period. But it isn't a life sentence.
Yeah, that's good to know.
It doesn't have to be.
Exactly. And if a child feels like, what, even though I feel better, I don't feel as badly if I eat whatever it is, I don't want to take that chance. And
That's
so
right.
that's a decision that he or she can make as they grow older. Britta, we are almost out of time, and I would like to ask you to share with our viewers, where can they find your book? Where can they find more about you, your website? Please share that information with us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so my book is available on Amazon or Barnes and Noble online. You can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook at Britta Helayne. I also have a website, brittahelayne.com. There are free downloads on there. The symptoms checklist and the common offenders are on there if you'd like to go and look at that. If you'd like to work with me, you can go on my website and sign up for a free consultation, or just message me on Instagram or Facebook. I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. And those common offenders, those charts are extremely they provide so much knowledge to parents in such a short, concise little graphic. And I highly recommend that if anybody has any questions about their own child or another, a child in their life, maybe it's not their child, maybe it's a niece, a nephew, a loved one, to please check it out. And Britta, I want to take a moment and first of all, thank you so much for being our guest, for taking the time to know that your experience could really, really be helpful to other people. And by writing this book and sharing your journey, Why Can't You Just Behave, is such a gift to the world. And I'd like to close our show today with a quote from you, Britta. And you said, "You are not a bad parent, and your child is not a bad child. Look to uncover what may be causing your child's struggles so that your child and your family can live peaceful and healthy lives." Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.